understand, I'm Italian, but as you probably can also hear, also a bit American. So I hope you can follow my accent. I'm very, very quick, and I have a lot of information. I didn't even know how, I took a lot out, but I really wanted to make sure that in my 30 minutes here, so I will be really speaking quickly, you will get a little bit of a full view, a lot of food for thought, especially because we will have an unbelievable panel after, and you can ask them more and continue the conversation later on. Mostly to talk a little bit about what are the latest trends, what are companies globally, but also especially in this region working on and focusing on both investments and also their time and efforts. But also really looking at what are the top employers in this region, what are the top industries, and what are the top drivers of attractiveness. If you do want to be top of mind, if you do want to build a strong employer brand, what should you focus on? How should you communicate? I will touch upon, but it is a bigger conversation and hope to have it, on how do you localize an employer value proposition that is global, or how do you regionalize it or make it relevant for the different nationalities, for the different realities, for the different target groups. But again, just a bit, and I'm sure the rest of the day we can talk about it, and then how to go from good to great. I'm showing you here not the examples from our great panelists, because they will be here and show it, not from a lot of you in the room, but I thought to take a lot of examples of organizations and how they are actually putting all these, their EVP and their brands into action. So one thing I want to say before, I want to thank LinkedIn, because of course we recruit through you and it's amazing. I've been an early adopter, but you're part of my everyday learning and development. I truly do learn from all of the network, and I will be more from you in the future. Hope to connect with you, because you truly are that for me. You teach me and provide me with all that information. So I do personally really thank you a lot, and I'm very happy to be here. So quickly, a lot of the information you will see comes from the largest group of millennials and Gen Xers surveyed across the world. We survey over 800,000 all around the world annually. We just finished collecting in most regions, about to finish up here as well, the latest trends. We poll students and graduates and young professionals in 3 months' time. So a lot of it is fresh and new, so hopefully, and you see all the regions. We are very, very expanding rapidly in the Middle Eastern regions and in many others. So when you ask yourself, where does this data come from and what's the poll, it is quite a lot. So let's go right into it, as you heard, time of essence. Key items: future-proofing the company's success with top talent. You mentioned it earlier, why, and why has it become on the agenda of all CEOs? Talent is a competitive advantage for every business. I will show you why. Hopefully, I will also provide you with 1 or 2 slides that, of course, you can have from this, that I've seen a lot of our organizations I work with that finally are able to show this to their leaders when they're trying to say, we need to do more. And why? Because it does impact the bottom line. Translating complex brand to the employer branding space, clearly that is the issue of many of your companies. Even if you're not a conglomerate, and there are many in this room, in this region, and that's complex to explain what you stand for. Every firm is also for talent, recruiting all different things, from an engineering to an IT to finance. So how do you make your message relevant to all those audiences in just a few seconds you get on a mobile app? Leveraging the strength of a global brand locally. Why is it still important? Even these regions especially are different. Why is it still great and important to have a global brand and to leverage that? And where is the secret of success there? And global workforce planning, creating your own global talent pools. I would say that more than half of the conversations I have with many of you in the room and in this region and globally is about how do I find this great talent studying abroad who wants to come back, who doesn't see the opportunities there because they think they're going to get a job there. How do I get them back? We also have an enormous amount of studies proving that talent who studies internationally and abroad is actually some of the top performers in these top schools. What they don't and can't always find is what it means to stay in the countries they study, but they also don't seem to know how to come back here. They don't see the jobs. So how can you be the one capturing them? Also understanding and capturing millennials. The differentiation, I think you will see it, and that is in the storytelling and understanding why are you different in a very intimate manner. We will see in a second a few examples. and effectively using social media, professional networks to engage in conversations with millennials. I cannot express how that is on the top. I will show you some stats. We heard it today, so I'm not going to talk too much, but let's just say that everything that was just said is very, very true. And it is, just by the stats you heard, it is not just only here that the penetration is so strong, but in all emerging markets, it's actually the strongest, from a Brazil to a Russia to China to Turkey, where the penetration there is even stronger. These are markets where they're early adopters of these vehicles. These are the only vehicles they're going to use, so you really would be excluding all of them and not speaking at all to them in a very relevant manner. And I will show you why that is extremely critical with this new group of talent coming in, no matter what geography and nationality they come from. Developing long-term relationship with millennials is also extremely key. What I mean by this is showing them how you're open to boomerang hires, keep them engaged, create alumni out of it. LinkedIn is a perfect example where you can actually be proud of where you worked before, and you being proud of them coming and going, and I'll show you here again some examples. Some best practices are done where, especially at an early stage of recruiting, they're talking and bringing some of their alums and saying, they worked here, and we know you may just come and then go, and I'll show you why and how long you plan on staying. Why telling them that already now you will want them back, even if the path's not forever with you. That is going to be key, because then they will be great ambassadors for you. And diversity and inclusion. I'm very happy to see that the conversation that I have daily in this region, especially, but also globally, of course, in the United States, that's always been an issue, but now in Europe because of women on boards, but here for many other reasons and complexities, this is a key item I'm very, very passionate about, and I know all of you are as well, and everyone is addressing this, is addressing how it is inclusive. And I'm also very happy that nowadays, if until 2 years ago we always and only spoke about diversity, but that word is only really present, it makes only sense in the English language, we really are looking at it as diversity and inclusion. Because the world is vast, and it's about whatever underrepresented minorities we see in the different geography, and that may very be different no matter what and who we're looking at. So, what are the 9 steps? I know I'm a very process-oriented person, so I want to know, okay, so how do we start? I get a lot of companies say, how do we even start all of this? I don't have anything in place, and I need to know step by step. First, of course, and I know you do that, you define your needs and wants. That's how you build a strong employer brand and strategy. Secondly, you locate it. You heard what I said, not necessarily here. There's also that same talent abroad. So understanding where you can find it, what schools, what are the, who are the different channels, even LinkedIn, Facebook, any different channel you can find them, that's going to be key. Your target group's mind, of course, what do they want? What's going to bring them, what's going to make the difference? Set your unique selling points. Of course, we talked about it, what's an employer brand? Really, you shared it early very well. You like that. I like to call them unique selling points because ultimately it is about that. And then understanding your perceived employer image. What do they think now? You might think you don't have an employer brand because you just don't have the values in place yet, they're not really official, but actually you do. Because everyone has an employer brand, that's just what the audience thinks about you. That maybe you don't control. What not everyone has is a set employer value proposition. And I know in general, especially what's true for all these regions, is maybe you don't have an employer value proposition that is locally adapted. So, but it is important to at least know what they're thinking to start, knowing what to say. And then, of course, looking at the competitors out there. When it comes to recruiting, you all know very well that it's not your direct competitors always. Google's everyone's competitor nowadays when it comes to a certain set of talent, as well as some other big brands. So that's key, and that's key for you also to show your management as well that it's not just who you think. We may be the strongest in market success, but that's not going to get us the talent because we're competing across the board. Communicating effectively, of course, is key. A lot of companies put together their materials before they have a plan. I'm sure none of you do that in here, but just in case, that's of course an importance. And testing, if you can't measure it, so that's also why the analytics that, again, here LinkedIn provides as well is so key. If you can't measure it, you will not be able to drive the difference. You won't be able to know what you've done has been effective, and also necessarily ask for more, because you can't really measure the success. And looking at how many applications you get or the quality for hire may not only be the best in a specific way. So, Why did I talk about talent being such a key driver? It is changing at a rapid pace. The way to drive and show how you and your job is so critical to the business is really the following. This is the market transition that's underway. Clearly we see the following to the left industries, music, technology, news, being the ones that have been really, really, revolutionized. Everything has changed there. It really is true that there's some companies that no longer exist that had to rapidly change because of the new technologies in place. And it's affected these industries more so than the others. But that's quickly changing dramatically, and so the pressure is on them. We all know that with a good idea can be reproduced very well. So the real market leaders are those who come up with that first idea and who also know to bring that business and their companies into the new era, new ideas, and not miss the boat. So to not become this, for this not to happen to any of you. Because it was, and like this, I think we know a million of companies that we all know used to be so certain and big and strong. I've been doing this for 17 years. That you never think there would go, but because of just some great new thinkers that really tried and dared and creatively came up with what the next step would be, they were able. Another key stat that really shocked me when I heard it is that until 4 years ago, the length of an organization, again, talking about locating your talent group, what I meant by, talent pool and looking at it globally, looking at your talent across, and if you're a multinational firm, really creating combined talent pools, or yourself partnering with some organizations and schools outside that can provide you that. And again, LinkedIn's a perfect idea of a global talent pool. So congratulations for being so strategic in that. So a shift from tactical to strategic recruiting was key. The other key thing, I told you 51% of students of the top talent, because we can segment it in our research, is going to study abroad. And especially the high performers, those are those who will bring you your business to the next level. So you can find them all over, not just here. So understanding it, we talk about millennials. One thing that is different than any other generation, and we partner with all the ones who write the books, so Neil Howe and so on the difference. The millennial, or Gen Y, what's key about them is that they are very different across the world, and they're constantly changing. What's true now is not going to be true in 3-4 years. That is not what my generation, obviously, not Gen Y, did. We were pretty much consistent throughout the last span. So what do they want? I know you've been millennial to death, so I'm just going to show you what I think is key to know, and why do we all need to deal with, some challenges that we have in managing these millennials, is because by 2015, as you see, they're going to be almost half, and by 2020, which is just around, they're going to be already almost, all of them in the workplace already. So we're not talking about attracting millennials and understanding them because we need to attract them. The issue is retaining them, and of course then attracting them, because they're already with us, and I know you're feeling some of the pains. And why? Because as you see here, 50% of them would rather have no job than have a job they hate. And why, what you mentioned earlier, which was really so true about the purpose of why a company does what it does, it's because they want to know why they're going to be doing this and spending all these hours. The purpose is going to be key in their messaging. 80% think they deserve more recognition than they get. I know that, that's why these training programs that you put in place and the constant mentoring that you're doing and that you need to do is going to be always so more vital. 75% are not satisfied, so retention is, I know, an issue, going to continue to be, because it's called the constantly unsatisfied generation, and keeping them engaged. So that's why what's next is always the most common question they ask you. What's the next training? What do I do next? Where do I go? Who should I talk to? And that's a burden on us as managers to mentor them through. 33, choose recognition over higher pay. So I know that pay is very important here, and it will always be. It is a threshold element. Without that, you probably won't even get on their radar, but it's not going to be the differentiator, and it's certainly not going to be what's going to get them to stay motivated and then perform. And an employer brand and a strong employer value proposition that is a winner one is focusing on that, top performers, and getting them to work and be engaged. And then 90% think they deserve their dream job. So let's look at later on what is it. So just to give you a sense, and I'll go quickly through it, how they're changing also in their priorities and why we constantly have to survey them to understand what's changed now. If in 2003, pursuing education, becoming leaders, the sound financial base, so salary was key, Then already in 2008, we saw the dedicated to a cause and a company with a good reputation was key. Now we see that the security is key, so understanding how you're diversified in your business, your stats, your financials, because they've seen all over the world, even here, big companies just falling, and so they're going to be looking at that, so you need to have that prominently, and I'll tell you later where, a message that's visible. But also really a lot about the friendly, the ethical in this region as well, environment will be key, but the respect, we'll show you in slides, it's really interesting, and the dynamic and innovative creative thinking. So innovation, someone told me, and it is so true, in the workplace is translated into being seen as a progressive environment. But a company who's innovative is one that is able to harness the creativity of its groups, of its individuals, into coming up with innovative ideas. So the word creativity and innovation are really, in the workplace, combined. And of course, also, they want to work with true global challenging work. So having multinational opportunities or being an international firm and not just only local will also be important, because they know that the world is here and outside, no matter where you are. And they're looking, they know that that is going to look good on the resume. That's still part. But key, it's going to be about them feeling and realizing themselves with you. So the soft self-actualization themes. So you'll come here and you'll make a difference, come here and change the world. We heard it earlier, perfectly in line. Those are the themes. What used to be instead important, and still is with my generation, is more about, I can say I work for a big company, I'm, more about philosophical needs, social needs. I feel proud to say it's a recognized brand. Those were important then, not now. Now this is important. How you will enable them to feel at home at work. What they now call, not anymore work-life balance, but work-life integration. I've heard a lot of the definitions. I'm sure you have as well. But why do I say this? And why? I mean, as you saw, we go and conduct annual research in 32 countries, professionals and graduates. This is, and I'm sorry, I hope in the distance you can see it, I think on your iPads you might. These are just to show you the differences. There are plenty. But what's not so different, and I also put in the global average of all 32 countries, the number one career goal is to, have a work-life balance. Such a big word, so difficult to understand. I will show you what they mean by it. Then, depending on the different countries you'll see here, and number two, to have an international career. Not at all important in others. To understand this, and I'm not gonna, you will have this, and I'd love to discuss with all of you what you think, it would be great. But as you see here, it does change. Becoming a leader or manager is actually extremely important in some countries, especially in the UAE. Not so much in others. In Turkey it's key, in India, and others not at all, as you'll see here at 5th, 4th place. So the differences are many. That's where the localization of the message is. That's where you're going to get people to go, okay, that's what I want to do. And if you look at Saudi here and the Emirates as well, you'll see here differences here as well. So the localization will be key. But still, work-life balance, as you see, is the number one. So what do they mean? What does it mean? What I always thought it meant, and it still does to me, it's about working less hours or having a control, not flying all over the world, like I actually do. But for them, it's about the respect. I was shocked when I saw this, and this region is especially true. If you look at segmented by women and men, it's even more true. And the flexible working condition, which also, maybe, it's a very personal thing. And it's also how you are saying that you respect. This is respect for religion, and respect for the very visible traits of diversity, but also for the invisible ones, for those things that you can only see by showing, really. So these are some diversity best practices. I'm only going to show you a few. We have plenty more because, I can say it, but I want to show you how it's been described. This just came out, it's Danone. It talks about the percentages they have of women in the boards. And the funny thing is, if I ask all of you here, do you think it's high? It doesn't really matter. The fact that they're addressing it is what matters. The fact that they say it's in the very prominent part of their page, career page, a website, which means to the audiences, and we saw it because then we measured what the change was, wow, they're so inclusive. They're just being honest with what they have, which by the way isn't always so great, but they're proud, and they're proud also of changing it. This is another example, I don't know if they're in the rooms, but of how the same is then the respect for its people can also be described. it's a little more visual here, and that is key. So I advise you to do more of this. I advise you to look at some of these best practices, and we have plenty more, and really talk about it. Another key thing is, what's important to know is, the biggest competitor of all firms is, of course, Google, and we'll see some others across every geography, but it's actually starting my own business. 32 countries, this percentage went from 5% last year to now 20% on average in several regions, and some others even higher. We know that here it is also part of something that you can do, and there's a lot of how to get started, and it's part of something, you know, embedded in the culture, but it's a global trend, which means that's a completely different thing. And what, you know, before to say you joined a firm that was so well known, that's again not at all the same thing. So that's a different type of competitor. That's a very different type of value proposition. Only the firms that will start addressing how you can be a great launch board, where you can train them to become the best at running their own business. That and embedding those themes in your EVP will be absolutely key. So stimulate entrepreneurship and show them how you do that all the time when they come in those years. Because if they are not going right away, they will be thinking of going, and it may be a way for you to make up. This is just a best practice of Audi and how they're calling this initiative Startup Europe, the word startup. So you will see a lot more of these words, key, very attractive, because that's what's being attractive. You will have this, so you will see it. This is a Ducati example. Another important thing, and that's going to be key for you, is there's never too early to go reach them, which is also why I start communicating, and great that even on LinkedIn, this has become a very big community on the site, because, and a great place for you to communicate to them. You know, the sooner you can, and the sooner they have an experience with you, the sooner you will be able to create that employee brand. 95%, if there was ever a question, is it important that I have an internship program? 95% is one of the highest percentages we see in 32 countries. So absolutely. What do they want from it? It's not always a job, but it is just the fact to be able to write it, the experience. They want to get to know you before they choose you. The same that we do with any choice we make in our lives, important ones. We want to see, we want to click the video, we want to read more. Why wouldn't they want to do that with a place they're going to be spending most of their hours? So these are the important things. We also can dissect it by engineers, natural sciences, business. But as you see, it's not necessarily always and only about the time. It's also about and making sure this is a great experience will be key. This is a great best practice. Coca-Cola goes up a lot in our rankings. It's not so much about their value proposition, although I don't know if many of you know, but they have a happiness institute, and I'm not kidding, it's true. They invest in making their employees happy, and we'll see much more about it. I can send it to you. So they are doing a lot on trying to be seen and having values that they care and make a difference. But they also activate incredibly. They activate through LinkedIn, all many other channels, their own, virtually, these kind of competitions that are not in person, but they give that experience. So that's a secret, and that is a best practice. I will send you more of those, but I'd say Coca-Cola does it really extremely well. And also because it's important to know how long they plan on staying. And these are, as you see, students, specifically in this case, attracted to a company, but in general, 53% of the students do plan on staying around 2 years. And this, I would say, is pretty high, and this is due also to a lot of the training programs that are pretty lengthy in different regions. And again, I do believe that this generation, as you heard, if you do engage them and they get meaningful jobs and you rotate them and you make them feel like they're included and it's exciting, they will stay much longer than any Gen Xers. But as you know, the stats are clear. They're probably going to have 12 to 16 jobs in the next 20 years in their lifespan. That's up, 60% from what our generation is. So what are the do's? What are the key elements associated with the top employers? This is a word cloud. We looked at the top 5 employers. What should you not do? Because we asked that as well. And it's interesting here, the differences between engineers or nationals are not completely different. But in general, it is around they don't think you provide work-life balance. You just saw that what they mean by it is very different than what generally we go talking about. So please embed that in your value proposition and talk about that. Also, the lack of good reputation, so what's written about not. And not very familiar, so there's still a lot of that they don't know. And the career growth. Becoming a manager is one of the #1 drivers of attractiveness. So you need to tell them, and if you don't tell them, they're just going to assume you don't. How quickly can they get there? Have you try to discuss that. So Our new rankings are coming out in almost 2 months, so this is last year, so not what you just did now, but before, so I'll keep it very quickly. But these are the top employers in 2013. The new ones are about to come out. And this is the business, and this is all Middle East, excluding the UAE. I will show you in a second which ones were the top employers, and you will have it, so please allow me to skip quickly through this. But also, of course, there are big differences when we're looking at only UAE nationals versus non, as you can see. And some of the biggest employers, so we'll be hearing from some here today. I would love to take more questions from you, but it could take forever, so this is just another reiteration of it as well, but we're just comparing the nationals in UAE to Saudi. And just to show a couple, we could have Egypt and others as well, but this is just to show you who's winning their hearts. Key items, now we're looking at from good to great. Do I have 5 more minutes? Because I see some, great, okay, great. So, 2 things that we've seen can be done right, and I'd love to open this conversation later on. In order to win them over, of course, you need to have a very strong employer value proposition or perceived one, and you need to know who you are so that you can communicate and, most importantly, retain the talent internally, because it's more internal than not. But another way that I've seen being very effective, but more short-term and then not really long-term and maybe not really effective to retain talent, is to have a very strong activation. So to communicate it, like we see. Have a strong campaign, have a strong case competition. It can get a lot of attractiveness. It will bring you maybe up to the ranks that year, but it won't keep them. The combination is crucial. It is super important to have strong values, but I also see a lot of firms who really are who they should be and everything, but they just simply don't communicate it effectively. So I'll show you who does things well. Of course, Google, Apple, these are amazing, just to give you some very general examples of those who do both. When Apple did not do, as you heard earlier, we've had them on our rankings for 17 years. Depending on the product they launched, they would go up, very relevant to the product, then down, and when they didn't have one. And that really affected also the input of talent they have. When they realized, thanks to the Googles who came in and said, you know, we come up with great ideas and we figure out a way to monetize them, and then they really started treating their employees just as well as they did the ideas they came out with, they were really, and they'll tell you, we worked a lot with them, stimulated to say, you know what, there's something wrong we do here. We need to make a better place of working so that we can keep it and attract, you know, those creative thinkers that will continue to give the great ideas. So they changed, and that is why they're now much more consistent and top all across. So what do you do? What do you embed? You heard it earlier, so I'm not going to talk about it. Talk about the why you do what you do, not what and not how. The purpose of what you're doing, and this is Apple, and I'm sure many of you have read the book, because 85% of the students globally say that their job will be a part of who they are. So the why you do what you do is also so much better than the what, because that may change, and also you may have a problem with the what you do sometimes, or bad press, and you don't want that to be the reason why they stay, or they go and not come to you. This is just a way of visually, because a lot of people say Google's not recruiting in this region. It's the biggest misconception. They recruit a lot. They just do it online and digitally. They don't come. They usually don't do in person. That's how they engage. But look at what their HR director has in the message at the bottom of his signature. Do cool things that matter. You will then see a Unilever talk about dream big, set goals, take action. You will also see, this is the type of career fairs that they do online, it's your turn to change the world. So these are the messages. Told you I'd show you. J&J, all about, the heart, be vital. This is Microsoft, focusing so much on CSR initiative. It's absolutely key. That is the newest thing and a new value driver, very important. Talking about how your organization is involved, and they do it on their website very prominently. So you will see, and I'm giving you some heads up on some key things. Leadership is also a very important theme in this generation, absolutely, especially in this region. Training. This is IBM, but I would also say GE has the best. It is the most associated with this particular value. If you look at their word cloud, GE has leadership, development as enormous, and then everything else smaller. So that is key. You know what you'll get there, and that's extremely differentiating. And these are some best practices of communicating. Another key theme that will be important, you heard, is about being global. So how do you show that in 2 seconds, or on your LinkedIn page, or visually? Because this is a visual thing too. You don't have to use words. And we see a lot of these examples from an EY or, again, a Unilever. So how do you do it? You have to differentiate that. That must be in your message. You of course also have to be able to translate the global values into local messages, because international here means a very different thing than in another country. Your company is a different reality, so you need to, describe that. And also going from relevance to resonance, going from explaining to the audience why you do what you do, not what, of course. And this is, I think, the video you were talking about earlier in your previous entry. It is about why, again, the purpose, the relevance to what you do. So, before I get into what to do in activation, and I have 2 minutes, but I will do it, I promise. What should be global, what should be local? The EVP, so the values that hopefully have been developed together with an inclusive environment, not top down, should be the umbrella proposition. You choose a company because you think it's, again, take a GE, leadership opportunities, great people, things that they are because they've learned it internally. That's the umbrella proposition. But then in each region, the platforms, the message platforms, the tone and tonality, the examples, the stories, because it should be about authentic, those are localized. Those must be localized. But a lot of the times when I work with global and then I work with local offices, they misunderstand each other on this key point. It's not the values, it's the way you describe those values that has to change. What then goes back in being global is the consistent look and feel. And what I mean by this is the color, and a couple, but not everything. And you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. So good to great on communication. I think we saw this, so it's exactly the same. You may think you're dealing with this talent in your region, but if you then say, I just want engineer students, then you limit it to this. Then if you really want those engineers with the qualifications that you care for, you maybe get this. Then if you say, well, I also need them to be with this kind of experience or this nationality, you'll get to this. I think you get the point. You need a specific talent group. However, you need to start with the longer. So the truth is, when you're branding yourself, especially taken on LinkedIn, you need to first get some awareness with all. They need to know about you. They need to start. So that you can, in fact, then target those. And the ways you communicate to those who you want to just be known for and build awareness and engagement, that's one message. But when you need to be targeted and really recruit that specific, then you need to speak to them in a very different way. So just to give you a sense that it's not just that simple. And of course, depending on where you are, if you need to increase the awareness, it is more about the emotional communication, as well as if you need to be considered as an employer. Think it as a dating. You need to know someone in order to consider them and want to go out with them, to then choose to possibly, want to engage with them and then possibly get married. Someone to give me that example. I thought it was a good one. And these are the different phases in our mind. This is the purchasing funnel used in commercial marketing as well. So the storytelling is key. Also understanding where you need to work, knowing where you stand in order to maximize. And to the point that we were making earlier, we survey companies on what they're investing in. It used to all be from 2008 to 2013 about their corporate website. The money was being put there because there weren't some, they weren't global, they weren't interactive. But in 2014, 15 and onwards, it's all about your social media strategy, how you are in the digital. And I cannot tell you, the budgets are shifting completely. As you see, it's 16% was spent in 2012, now we're up to 26, and this is nothing. In regions like this, it's going to be 40, 50. I believe that it's probably going to get to 80%. That is what they're on. And then, not even, the mobile, being mobile on it is key. And what you need to measure really is more about, all of it, how you're engaging this. So it's not just about starting to, yes, I'll have a LinkedIn page. It's everything else you need to continue to do on it to keep them engaged. Because if you think you're a leader but no one is following it, you're really actually just going for a walk. I think it gives us the point. So going beyond, also being a little, even talking to LinkedIn, say, what can I do that's a little different? Because that is the platform they're going on and they're going to continue to go on. So try also to talk to them to see how they can help you stand out a little. What are some interesting things? They have so much in knowledge. Also telling them also, what I love on LinkedIn, and sorry to use you, but it's what I look at too, and companies are using, is companies are not just putting job openings. I think actually just doing that is not so wise. I love it when you see it. Take a L'Oreal does it very well. They have 60% is actually about the products, the food products, some other things, and then they go in and of course they intertwine the different opportunities they have. Very good way. And of course all high tech and high touch. You can be very personal on these on these channels, and adapt the message to channels of your target audience. So, you know, it is case competitions that you can promote on these sites. It is about, of course, also your global or local internships, your training programs. That's what they want to hear there. And of course, they want to hear it on their mobile, you know, phones. That I'm glad you already covered that topic for me, because that's so true. So I see a lot of great ones, and then they can't open them. They're going to think you're really like old ages. And this is just a good case competition. L'Oreal's huge success because of this. It's all online. They hardly go to campus, but the interactiveness of this, and the same with Coca-Cola. So I'm just giving you some best practices you can use. This is actually much more about what they do on the job, but they're talking about the cool things they do once you join them. They do internal competitions, and then they promote that outside. And there's Intel. I'm sure you've seen the video. If you haven't, it's embedded in this. It's amazing. Heineken's video, I'm sure you've seen of the job. It's really fun and different, and it still allows for them to recruit because it's very authentic about them. And of course, GE, it's extraordinary. And this is just some best practices. You talked about them of mobile. How they're mobile optimized. We test a lot of these, and these come up as some of the highest ones that they really like, because they're just quick and simple. You can submit your resume, all of it, and of course link back to the different social medias, which they're on every day. And finally, of course, B&Gs, because here on this they talk about innovation, they talk about the challenges, there are links to the social media. It's easy to know where to go to learn, because that's important, but also apply. So very simple, very streamlined, interactive, and this is just one from Emirates Airline, where, as you see, it's also localized. So even in the activation, localizing the message to your audience will be key. I know something we are working a lot in this region, you know, do you need to translate that? Absolutely, if you can. That's showing respect. That is showing that you're allowing for all their differences as well when they will come to in your workplace. And if there's one theme I think you understood, is being an inclusive working environment will get you not only the talent to come in as a real differentiator, but definitely to stay, which is all about what employer branding is. So I know I went away a little over my time. I do hope I gave you food for thought, and we have much more. But I do thank you so much for your time.